Hi, good evening and welcome to the Transfer Show, live from London's iconic Battersea Power Station. Yeah, it's great to have you here. Tonight we are joined by the former Newcastle and Manchester City goalkeeper who moved on deadline day in January, Shay Given. Dharmesh Sheth, Kaveh Solopol, who we just can't move on, they're still here. Henry Winter, journalist and broadcaster, will join us a little bit later. And we have a live studio audience. Well, with a week to go until the window shuts, is time running out for Marcus Rashford to leave Old Trafford? We understand it's business as usual at Tottenham, but will Ange Postecoglou make it through the window and get the reinforcements he needs? New Milan's signing, Kyle Walker, explains why he left Manchester City and what Pep Guardiola will be missing.
A very comfortable conversation. I would like to think that he knows what I bring to the dressing room and the atmosphere that I create.
And it's 1 in, 1 out at Celtic today, as a fan's favourite returns to the club. Got to start with Marcus Rashford, though. Kaveh, given what Ruben Amorim said yesterday, that he'd rather play a 63-year-old goalkeeping coach than Rashford, is he done at Manchester United?
I mean, judging by what his manager says, you'd find it very difficult to imagine a scenario where he plays for Ruben Amorim again. But having said that, 18 months ago, he signed a new contract at United. It doesn't run out till the summer of 2028. So unless United or his representatives find a new club for him before deadline day next week, then he'll be staying at United. And then Ruben Amorim will have a decision to make whether to freeze him out or to reintegrate him into his first team squad. For what it's worth, my own personal opinion is that on his day, Marcus Rashford is still a brilliant footballer. Let's not forget, a couple of seasons ago, he scored more than 30 goals for United.
He's not played for ages, though, Kaveh. We don't know what his day's like anymore.
Well, I think we do. We still remember how good he was. OK, there are some issues at the moment in his relationship with Ruben Amorim. But as a football fan, and as a fan of Marcus Rashford, you'll be hoping that, yes, better days lie ahead for him. And if it's not going to be at United, it'll be somewhere else.
What is interesting is that Henry Winter did that interview with Marcus Rashford. Henry's going to be on the show a bit later on. That was on December the 17th. That's 2 weeks before the transfer window opens. So if you're doing an interview then and saying that I need a new challenge, I need the next steps in my career, I think the growing feeling then was, all right, something's lined up for Marcus Rashford to leave Manchester United. There must be a club who are going to take him. With day 27 in this transfer window, he's still at Manchester United. The question maybe to ask is, has Rashford maybe overestimated the market that was in for him, potentially? Maybe, because he's still at United. You had AC Milan who were interested in him at the start of the window. They've now signed Kyle Walker. They can't actually sign Rashford now because of the non-EU player rule that they've got in Serie A. Borussia Dortmund have shown an interest throughout this transfer window. The finances simply don't work. Kaveh mentioned it there about Barcelona. Yes, he wants to go there, but all of the financial implications with that club makes it very, very difficult to do. So, as it stands, day 27, as I say, he's still at United, and it doesn't look like he's any closer to finding that club. And Kaveh made a really good point there, because if come 11 p.m. on February the 3rd, he's still at United, there's going to have to be some sort of reintegration into the first team squad, because if in the long term he is not part of Amorim's plans, they need to raise his market value by the summer. So he has to be playing, ideally, at a European club, if not for Manchester United, and playing regularly and scoring goals.
We put that to Shay. Reintegration. Can that happen, given that your manager has publicly humiliated you?
I think it feels from the outside, obviously looking in, that Ruben's come in and he's had to make a bit of a statement towards Marcus, and not in a bad way. He said if he trains properly, if his lifestyle's properly, if he does everything right, he'll actually be in the squad. I don't think he's ever once said, I don't want him part of the team or part of the squad. But if he's having a bad attitude, which we feel that's the word coming out of Manchester United, and he's not training to the standard that Ruben wants him at, then I think it's actually quite refreshing that a Man United manager's come in. He's been brutally honest with everyone. Maybe people will say too honest at times, but at the same time, I think every single player knows where he stands in. Because if Marcus can take a day off training or put his feet up for an afternoon, Garnacho, and it's the next one, Ahmad, maybe, it goes through the squad. So I think Ruben, you mentioned from a financial point of view and a business point of view, they would have to maybe, but I don't think Ruben Amorim will do that. I think he's set his stall out now and think, well, if he doesn't get up to the standard, he'll not be part of my plans. And I think it's a strong, positive message from the manager.
Do you see Rashford getting a move before February the 3rd?
I think it suits all parties, if I'm being honest. And I think we're all of the opinion Marcus Rashford, in his pomp, is a brilliant player. So I think even just purely forget all the finances and the wages and the salaries and the fee and all that kind of stuff. Just when you talk about football and his love for football, he hasn't seen him smile for, it seems, like a couple of years. He's not enjoying himself anymore. And it feels the best thing would be a fresh start, even for 4 or 5 months at a new club. Try and get his love for football back. And then, he's in a better position. Of course, Manchester United in a better position as well.
A lot of people have drawn the comparison with Rashford and Sancho, what happened with Sancho last year. To our knowledge and our information, there hasn't been an actual falling out between Amorim and Rashford, despite what he's saying in these news conferences, because he's still training with the first team squad, is Rashford. He's just not getting picked. I think this comparison is more when Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang left Arsenal. He was on big wages and they just decided, regardless of how much of a loss that they're going to make, because that is likely to happen with the wages that Rashford is on, I think Ruben Amorim is thinking we need to make this
United won't do that though, will they? Given that they're after money.
They might have to. Because at the moment, if he doesn't get a move and he's not playing, what are they going to do? They're going to have to. There's going to be some sort of loss at some stage, unless they can get a really good transfer fee. And like I mentioned before, they're going to need him to be playing to raise that market value ahead of the summer.
Interesting. Let's talk Garnacho, Darmesh. Developments today.
So, if you look at the situation with Garnacho, it feels like his future is the key to what Manchester United could potentially do with incomings and outgoings in this transfer window. I was at the game yesterday when United beat Fulham, and all the headlines were Amorim's quotes on Marcus Rashford. But he also spoke about Garnacho, and he started him in 4 of their last 5 games in all competitions. So you would think, right, he wants to keep him. He's got a future at United. United don't want to sell him, but Ruben Amorim says that anything can happen. He hasn't ruled out Garnacho leaving in this transfer window. Now, if they were to sell him, it would help with United's PSR, because every club is looking towards June the 30th still, and United, they need to look after that side of their finances, hence why we keep hearing there's no one untouchable in that squad. And if they do manage to do that, not only will it help with PSR, but it would help with potentially getting in players in this transfer window to start this rebuild that Amorim's trying to do. Napoli have made a bid, that's been rejected. I think they want to find some sort of compromise between what United want and what they're prepared to pay. And also Chelsea are interested as well. They're yet to come in with a formal bid, but they're, as Carve, I'm sure will be able to explain, they're just lurking around in the background for Garnacho.
Tell us.
Lurking. Yeah. Well, look, I think everybody knows that Chelsea have a player trading model, and they are interested in Garnacho. Normally, a player of his age and of his quality, Manchester United wouldn't even think about selling him. But if he becomes available at the right price and the terms of the deal suit Chelsea, I think Chelsea would definitely make a move for him. But I think it would also depend on players leaving Chelsea as well. So I could see it happening, but I think people have sort of jumped ahead of the story, really. I know there have been some reports that Chelsea have made offers for the player. As far as we're aware, they haven't made any offers, but there are very good relations between Chelsea and Manchester United at the highest level. So it's definitely a possibility and something that could happen, especially if he decides that he'd rather stay in the Premier League rather than moving to Italy.
Could a possible move to Chelsea depend on what happens to Nkunku?
I think what happens to Nkunku depends a lot on what happens at Bayern Munich with Matisse Tell, the young French player they've got there. Chelsea are interested in signing him. I think if he was willing to come to Chelsea, then Chelsea would be much more likely to do a deal to sell Nkunku to Bayern Munich. There's interest in Nkunku from United as well, but only on a loan deal. What was quite interesting is this weekend, Nkunku hadn't been playing. He'd been on the bench, but Enzo Maresca hadn't been using him. But he came on for half an hour against Manchester City on Saturday. Speaking to Chelsea supporters, though, I mean, some of them are quite excited by the fact that Garnacho may be coming, but they are saying, we don't need another wide player. What we need is a goalkeeper and an out-and-out striker.
Should United sell Garnacho?
And should Chelsea buy a new goalkeeper?
Stupid. I think Chelsea have 9 goalkeepers. How many goalkeepers do they need? I'm trying to stay in the goalkeepers union here. I mean, Robert Sanchez had a poor couple of weeks, and that was highlighted again at the weekend. He just needs to get his confidence back, I think. I know Jorgensen's pushing him hard as well behind him, so they have options in the goalkeeping department. Garnacho, it's a tricky one because a bit like, I don't know, the likes of Newcastle having to sell Anderson, you know, the clubs, the way the rules and the laws are set up, it's not what the fans want, I don't think, because you haven't to sell your best. Cole Palmer at Man City, for example, you know, the fans want to see local. I know Garnacho's not local, but people coming through the academy representing the first team. But with the way the PSR is and the financial fair play, these are the most profitable assets they can sell, because if they sell Garnacho, I don't know what the fee is, lads, but 50 or 60 million, then Ruben can reinvest that in the squad. I don't know. I mean, I think he burst onto the scene a little bit, and then he's sort of gone off the ball, and then he's come back up again. But I think with young players that happens. You get a bit of a trajectory up and down. He's a very good player, but again, if Ruben Amorim gets maybe 60 million for him or something along them lines, he might think I can get, you know, a left wing back perhaps and a striker for the same kind of money, because he needs to. There's no getting away from it. He needs to freshen up that squad.
Just very quickly, Napoli are expected to resume talks with United over Garnacho. And what Carve was saying about Nkunku, it would clearly be easier if United are dealing with Chelsea with Garnacho to try and get a deal done for Nkunku. But I don't think it would be ruled out if United sold Garnacho to Napoli. They'd still be interested in trying to get Nkunku in on loan. I think when you look at how Ruben Amorim plays and his formation, everyone's saying Garnacho's not a wing back and he's not a 10, whereas Nkunku could probably fit in to that, into one of the two number 10 roles. So when you look at it like that, it could work, but I mean, there's so many different factors that would have to come together for those deals to go through.
Speaking of fitting in, will Dorgu fit in at United?
So, as I mentioned before, Garnacho being key to a lot of potential deals, PSR-wise, but also trying to bring players in. Bringing in money for Garnacho would clearly help them negotiate further with Lecce for Patrick Dorgu, the left wing-back, which has become a real problematic position for United. Luke Shaw hasn't been able to be fit. Tyrell Malacia was out for like 18 months before he came back. So I think there's a gap in valuation between the two clubs. The Lecce president is playing the game. We don't want to sell Dorgu, but I think United are seeing that as maybe a negotiating tactic and maybe brinkmanship, who's going to blink first. But United will not overpay. So they're being very, very careful about how they want to spend their money, and they will have a valuation for Dorgu. Now, there's an alternative if they don't manage to agree a deal with Lecce for Dorgu, and that is Alvaro Fernandez Carreras. Now, he was at Manchester United. He went on loan to Benfica. Benfica had the option to make it permanent, which they did because he impressed. But United inserted a buyback clause in that for around 18 million euros, which is around 15 million pounds. So they could exercise that buyback clause to try and bring in Fernandez Carreras if Dorgu doesn't work. Now, if they sign either Dorgu or...
Yeah.
I know. That's where we are now. That's where we are. If they sign one of those two, then I think they will allow Tyrell Malacia to maybe go out on loan to get more regular first-team football. So...
Okay,
clear
right.
as mud.
Yeah. We're going to talk Manchester City now. We're going to talk Kyle Walker, who's revealed he had a really uncomfortable conversation with Pep Guardiola about leaving. We all thought it was all nice and comfortable and friendly. Apparently not. Walker not happy with his lack of playing time.
Obviously, things at Manchester City wasn't going too well, and I wasn't playing enough football of what I wanted to do. So a reason for me wanting to come and play football and for this great club was, that I hopefully can, play a little bit more football than what I was doing there. And I want to win things. When I spoke with Pep, it wasn't a very comfortable conversation, we'll say, because of the respect that we both have for each other, from what we've achieved both at Manchester City, everything that he's won at Manchester City, I've also won. And I would like to think that he knows what I bring to the dressing room and the atmosphere that I create.
The fact that he's a leader on and off the pitch, this is a characteristic that we need. He's an alpha male in the dressing room, and he can give a helping hand when the going gets tough, when things are going well as well. But he's not only very good on the pitch, he's very strong off the field as well. He can offer a great deal in a number of different areas. We're talking about a right back, but we also believe that he can play as a centre back. That's the role he's played at Manchester City.
An alpha male, Shay. Did Walker have to leave?
Well, it did surprise a few people. Actually, was lucky enough to play golf with Kyle a couple of months ago when he was left out of the England squad, and I think it was the first meeting of the season. And he was really frustrated with that because he's on 90-something caps. I don't know the exact number now, but he wants to make 100 caps, and he was frustrated.
I thought you meant he was frustrated with his golf.
Well, that's a different show altogether. but he was genuinely, because he wants to make 100 caps for his country, and of course if he's not playing for Manchester City, the Tuchel, the new manager, won't be looking at him. So I think there's a real, will for him to want to go and play, prove himself. He's still a top defender. And of course, he's gone to a big club in Milan, and he didn't get the game time. Enrico Lewis was sort of ahead of him at times. John Stones has played there, Akanji. It seemed that every sort of player apart from Kyle Walker was getting the game. So I kind of have respect for him to say, if I'm not getting the game time, I want to go and play somewhere else. I mean, he's got 6 Premier League titles. He's one of the most decorated English players of all time. What a great career he had at Manchester City. But he strikes me as someone who wants to go to Milan and prove to the fans over there he's still a top player.
Yeah, top player he is. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, journalist and broadcaster Henry Winter will join us, and Dharmesh and Kaveh will take us through the Premier League wrap, and they'll go through every single one of the 20 clubs and let you know what they're up to in this window. See you in a moment.
Welcome back to the Transfer Show. Time now to go round the clubs.
Certainly is. Arsenal are in talks with Rosenborg over a deal for Norwegian teenager Sverre Nupen. Alexander Zinchenko is attracting interest from Atletico Madrid and Borussia Dortmund.
According to Sky in Germany, Bayer Leverkusen have reached an agreement to sign Aston Villa's Emiliano Buendia on loan with an option to buy. Villa have made an offer to Villarreal for defender Juan Foyth.
Bournemouth, well, they're still looking for cover up front, and they've considered a loan deal for Brighton striker Evan Ferguson.
Wolfsburg have completed the signing of Brentford's Mads Roerslev. That's on an initial loan with a £5.5 million option to buy.
West Ham United and Tottenham are two more clubs considering a move for Brighton striker Evan Ferguson. I'm going to hear a lot about him, who could leave on loan this window.
Chelsea centre-back Renata Vega is in Turin, completing a loan move to Juventus until the end of the season. They're yet to show an official interest in Manchester United's Alejandro Garnacho.
Let's go to Crystal Palace now, and their defender Tyrick Mitchell is a player that Manchester United have checked on in this window, and he could be an option if their move for Lecce defender Patrick Dorgu falls through.
Armando Broja will stay at Everton for the remainder of the season after Chelsea opted not to recall him from his loan spell at Goodison Park.
Fulham are another of the clubs who are looking at, guess who? Evan Ferguson. The striker is now fit again, but is out of the picture at Brighton.
No Premier League club has made more signings this month than Ipswich's 3. They were looking at as many as 5 new additions to help them stay in the division.
Yep, Leicester City midfielder Hamza Chowdhury has undergone a medical at Sheffield United today. The deal is a loan until the end of the season, and that loan comes with an option to buy.
Liverpool remain quiet in this transfer window, with their main focus retaining the services of 3 of their key players: Mo Salah, Trent Alexander-Arnold and Virgil van Dijk, all 3 out of contract in the summer.
Yeah, Bayer Leverkusen now won't sign Manchester City's James McAtee after making a breakthrough in negotiations for Aston Villa forward Emiliano Buendia.
Barcelona have yet to make any formal arrangements to loan Marcus Rashford from Manchester United. Napoli haven't given up hope on signing Alejandro Garnacho. Lecce have said they don't want to sell Man United target Patrick Dorgu.
Yeah, Miguel Almiron is closing in on a return to former club Atlanta United. The MLS side have a broad agreement in place with Newcastle United for £8 million plus £3 million in performance-related add-ons.
Nottingham Forest retain an interest in Wolves forward Mateus Cunha. He's yet to sign a new contract and is also interesting Arsenal and Aston Villa.
A fee of £55 million is what it would take for Southampton to even consider selling Tyler Dibbling this month. They want to keep him at least until the summer.
It's been business as usual at Tottenham Hotspur today, despite their defeat to Leicester City. They want at least one new signing before the deadline, but it depends on capturing the right player.
RB Leipzig's Andre Silva is a forward option for West Ham United as Graham Potter aims to strengthen his forward line.
Wolves are back in talks with Lens over a deal for Kevin Danso. He could become their second centre-back signing this month after Emmanuel Agbadou.
That was the Premier League wrap. Now, we can't have Shay here and not talk about Newcastle. Alexander Isak, best in country, best in Europe?
Well, it's hard to disagree with that. It really is. He's having a phenomenal season, and obviously Newcastle fans watching going, we're happy with him. We don't want Alexander to go anywhere. He's having a brilliant season. But of course, when you're playing so well, you're scoring so many goals, there's going to be interest. That's the problem that Newcastle have. He's nearly doing too well. Eddie Howe's thinking maybe just take the foot off the gas a bit. But yeah, I mean, the goal at the weekend was phenomenal. The ball from Murphy, his first touch was world class. I mean, I don't say that lightly, and he passed it in the corner with his other foot. He's really at the top of his game. But I've said this before, Newcastle need to build their team around Alexander Isak. He's that good a player. You know, they want the owners want the win the Premier League. They want to be Champions League regularly, and you need players like him in your team. I know there's a few other clubs in the country are looking at him, but I think it's Eddie Howe will be desperate to keep hold of him.
Arsenal are one of those clubs, we believe, who've been looking at him. Is he the sort of player that would be the cherry on the top of the cake for them?
Oh, they certainly need a striker. I mean, their fans have been saying it for 5 or 6 years. You mentioned Aubameyang earlier. They haven't replaced that. Kai Havertz is a different player. He's more a support striker. He supplies goals, but he's not the clinical number 9 that Arsenal have had down the years. So he is the type of striker, but Arsenal aren't going to get him out of Newcastle. Why would you leave Newcastle now? I mean, what Eddie Howe has done for him in terms of how Newcastle are set up tactically, the service that he's getting, whether it's through the middle from Bruno Guimaraes, whether it's from Tonali or Joe Linton, the service he's getting from out wide, Anthony Gordon is back in form. Absolutely, he has to stay there. And the problem is that there are not many Alexander Isaks in the world. As you say, he's probably the best striker in the world at the moment.
Does it annoy you, Shay, that Newcastle have got all this money and because of the rules, they can't spend it?
It does annoy me, and I think it annoys most Newcastle fans as well. Remember the scenes when the takeover happened? They were celebrating on the streets of Newcastle, and we thought this is the moment that Newcastle can really compete at the very, very top. Now, I don't think there's a lot wrong with them, and it just feels that the rules or the laws. We sort of spoke to Henry off air there, but you know, the 100 million loss over 3 years. I think that was taken maybe 10, 11 years ago. I think they need to refresh the sort of finance side of things. Not Newcastle, I mean the whole Premier League. And it's just a shame that Newcastle, when they try and do something, that well, you can't do that, you have to do this. So there is a bit of a stopgap, it seems, when they try to do something. But at the same time, you know, Eddie Howe, I think, is the perfect fit for where they want to go. You just hope that they can get back, or not that they can't get back, they can spend more money. I think the rules might have to change a little bit, not just for Newcastle, there's other clubs. I mean, Aston Villa and the other clubs as well. You know, we talked before about Man United. I think the rules of the Premier League having to sell some of your best young players, because that's where the most profit is. I don't think that sits well with fans either.
Is that something that really... I know there are going to be changes, Henry, but it always seems to me it's kind of like the rules at the moment protect old money. The clubs that made money before the rules came in, and they're kind of protecting what they have.
Yeah, I mean, the essence of FFP or PSR in modern terms is sustainability. You know, we've seen owners, you know, we saw issues in Portsmouth in the past, so I can understand the logic of having this sustainability. You don't want sort of owners overspending and then sort of clubs being put at risk, because these clubs are so important. You know, they're the heartbeats of the community. I mean, Shay's completely right, sort of talking about sort of PSR and the younger players. The devil's always in the detail when you have rules like this. Obviously, it's changing with UEFA, the caps that are coming in for teams who are qualifying for Europe. But PSR for younger players, for homegrown players, who really should be the heartbeats of the club, one of our own. Also financially and emotionally, it's so important to have players like that. PSR should be more generous with them, whether that's including their wages and allowing their first 3 years in the first team for the wages not to be included in calculations, or a beneficiary of that. Because it's crazy. I mean, Newcastle United, they lost Elliot Anderson. Elliot Anderson is a terrific player. Wolves End Boys Club. But Newcastle do have a tradition of letting good talent head south. Alan Shearer in the past, you know, Chris Waddle, Paul Gascoigne, players like that. So you need to hold on. You know, Newcastle is a hotbed of football. So many young talents coming through these boys' club, Cramlington Juniors, Wallsend, places like that. You want to keep them. You want them playing in that famous black and white strip. And PSR and the financial rules should really accommodate
that. That's, I think, the frustrating thing is because they have the financial support. They don't have to sell them now because they need the money. They have to sell them to try and generate money to buy new players at the club. So, in a sense, on one hand, you're sort of weakening your squad or your team to try and strengthen it, you know. And there's always a gamble when you bring new players in as well. So, I just think hopefully they can tweak the rules a bit. Maybe that'd be nice.
Indeed. Right, we're going to take a break. Now, you'll be aware that Marcus Rashford said he wants to leave Manchester United for a new challenge. He said that to Henry Winter. We're going to talk all things Marcus Rashford after the break. See you in a bit. Yes, here we are, Battersea Power Station, with a live studio audience. Carve, Dharmesh and Henry Winter. Henry, of course, did that interview with Marcus Rashford. Tell us, how did it come about?
Well, I mean, I've known, as many journalists have, Marcus Rashford, for a few years. Obviously, covered his England career, covered a lot of the issues which often don't get covered so much in the media. The kind of good work they do, the community work. You know about it. Raheem Sterling with his sort of his racism. He's got a fantastic foundation. Michael Carrick, obviously, he's retired now. He's got a fantastic foundation which works in Manchester and Newcastle. Working with sort of young kids, coaching. So many of these players have got them. So all the England players have got it. So obviously Marcus Rashford hit the headlines very much by taking on number 10 Downing Street and feeding kids in this country so that they can actually go into their classes. I mean, it's crazy, 21st century wealthy country like ours, and we're, but fortunately Marcus won that argument, that battle, and kids now go into classes and can focus on their education more because of the food that they were getting and that he helped them get with other people as well. So yeah, always sort of admired that aspect of them. I mean, look, you played sport. I sometimes find it very difficult to differentiate the elite sportsman with the individual. I think the two merge so much, and you often see an individual's character comes out with the way they sort of perform. So particularly with this generation of England players, they're pretty conscientious individuals, and they've obviously got huge platforms that they can communicate their message. So with Rashford, what came about that at Christmas, he was going back to his old primary school, and there were 410 kids there, and he had presents for all of them. And one of the teachers just sort of came up to me and said, this is the only present some of these kids will get at Christmas this year. And that, is shocking and sad, and fair play to Marcus Rashford. The flip side of that, of course, is that he will be judged mainly on goals, on assists, on his contribution on the pitch. And if you talk to Manchester United players, and I was at Fulham yesterday, and Ruben Amorim is clearly unimpressed with what he perceives as a lack of effort in training. Rashford, I think himself would say that he's working hard in training.
I gather you've got an update from the Rashford camp on this situation, haven't you? Is that right?
Just my understanding is that he is training hard, but I think the understanding also, and the direction of travel for the last sort of few months, has been that Rashford, for tactical reasons and financial reasons, he needs to move on. Tactically, he doesn't fit into the tactical template that Ruben Amorim has of 3-4-2-1. You were talking about Garnacho earlier. Where does Rashford fit in that? He's not a natural number 10. He can play as the 9, but really he doesn't hold the ball up necessarily as Amorim wants. So for tactical reasons, also our old friend PSR, and financial reasons, Marcus Rashford is on a lot of money there. And for Amorim to invest in the squad as he wants to bring in the type of players that fit 3-4-2-1, they need to move some players out.
So, Carve, we touched on this in 5 o'clock. Do you see Rashford getting out of United before February 3rd's deadline?
Well, if the move is right for him, yeah, I can see it happening. But if it's not right for him, then he's well within his rights to stay at Old Trafford. Because 18 months ago, he signed a new contract. That was a new contract that was offered to him, and it doesn't run out till the summer of 2028. So he's well within his rights to stay where he is. My personal feeling is that there will be more options for him opening up the closer we get to the deadline. Because I would imagine Manchester United are saying to clubs who are interested in taking him at the moment, you're going to have to pay pretty much nearly all his wages. Whereas perhaps if we get closer to the deadline, they may lower those demands, and then more potential moves could come into play. That's what we've seen happen in the past with players.
Is there enough time, Darren?
I just wanted to ask Henry a question, actually, because you did that interview, I think it's December the 17th, so it's 2 weeks before the window opens. So when you're hearing him say, I want a new challenge, is the first thing that's coming into your head that there must be a club there that's already lined up? Because to do that interview and say that he wants to leave, and we're now a week away from the window closing and he still hasn't got a club.
In the run-up to that conversation, there were a lot of well-placed stories, well-sourced stories in the Telegraph, the Times, the Guardian, by well-respected, people with contacts like you in Manchester, which were basically saying that Manchester United were considering moving Rashford on. There were even figures on the, what would they want, 30 million, 40 million. So I think everyone sort of saw the direction of travel. So coming back to your point, was there a club out there, specific club? I don't think so. But I just find the whole situation very sad. And I think that one of the things that Rashford was very keen on was that he would go out through the front door with his head held high, because clearly he's going to leave. I would be surprised if he said he has.
In this window?
Yeah, he has to leave, because you look at the situation. I mean, at Craven Cottage last night, Ruben Amorim, he clearly doesn't have any involvement in his plans going forward. He needs to look. He's 27. He needs to get back to the sort of form and the focus and the love of the game of 2 years ago when he was scoring all those goals. If he wants to get back into the England squad, he's 27. He looks at that England squad and he just sees all these fantastic players, the chance they've got of winning a World Cup in 18 months' time. To do that, he needs to be playing, and he's not going to be playing for tactical reasons, for financial reasons, for whatever it is. Amorim clearly doesn't see him as part of his plans. He needs to move on. He needs to move on soon, get back playing again and showing what a good player he is.
And the point Carve made about the later in the window you go, and the more of these comments that Ruben Amorim makes, puts United's position slightly weaker if they want to offload Marcus Rashford. So whereas Carve was saying at the start of the window, right, United, you can pay all the wages, it's clearly not going to happen. A club is not going to be able to do that. But what they did this time last year with Sancho, when he went to Dortmund, they actually ended up making a profit on Sancho's wages, because as much as people will think it's not a great look for Manchester United to be paying any part of Rashford's wages if he goes, they did the same with Sancho. They might have paid half of his wages to go to Dortmund, but the better that Sancho did and the better Dortmund did, the percentage that United paid came down to the point where they actually made a profit on it. Is that something they can do with Rashford? The difference is half of Marcus Rashford's wages compared to half of Jadon Sancho's wages is still a big gap. That's the issue.
I mean, we often turn these things into pantomimes, and sort of we've got two characters and we build them up, and one's whacking each other over the head, and is Marcus Rashford going to respond to the 63-year-old goalkeeper potentially taking his place and all that? Well, he's probably got more chance of playing, as Amorim was alluding to last night. I think we should have a grown-up conversation, and I hope they are, because they're two intelligent people, Marcus Rashford on one side and Ruben Amorim on the other, and they should just shake hands and move on. It happens all the time in football. Do it with respect. Marcus Rashford has to be aware of his legacy at Manchester United, which should be greater than it is. But it's eroding by every comment from Ruben Amorim, and he needs to move on, and with an opportunity at some point to say to the Manchester United fans, because he is a Manchester United fan, and say, I've loved playing for this club. I'm sorry it didn't work out over the last 18 months for whatever reasons, but I genuinely wish you all the best, which I think he does. But he needs to restart his career elsewhere, and you've got a brilliant head coach in Ruben Amorim, who Manchester United and the powers that be upstairs, Ratcliffe, are backing 100%, as they should do. And Ruben Amorim will be at Manchester United longer than Marcus Rashford, so make the break soon.
That's a good point. So, Amorim being backed, let's talk Spurs. Is Ange Postecoglou being backed, and will he continue to be being backed, Carve?
Well, the latest information we have is that it's business as usual at Spurs. We had our reporter Paul Gilmore at the training ground today. He's been telling us all day that Ange Postecoglou is going to be staying. He is going to be taking the press conference on Wednesday for their Europa League game against Elfsborg. And I think the message that Paul is picking up is that Spurs want to stay united. They may try and bring in one outfield player in before the deadline. And I think there is some sympathy internally for the number of injuries that Postecoglou has had to sort of absorb and put up with. Although, I'm hearing a lot of people say, well, look at Bournemouth, the amount of injuries they've had, and look at how their manager's been coping.
Dharmesh, before we go to the break, because we've got to hustle, Celtic, I want to get them in. Possible movement in and out there.
Yeah, no, they're done. It's one out and one in. Yeah, the one out is Kyogo. we wouldn't have thought at the start of the season that, you know, someone like him would be leaving. But I think Celtic feel that they've got a good deal here. He's gone for £10 million and he's joined Rennes. And the reason they think that it's a good bit of business is because we think the player did want to leave, and that was because he had a conversation partly with the Japanese head coach, who said you need to be playing in one of European football's top 5 leagues. That's not great for the Scottish Premiership, admittedly. And so to get back into the reckoning with the Japan squad, he's 30 years old as well, and he's got to have a shoulder operation, which at some point is going to take him out of action for a considerable amount of time. So Celtic have thought now is probably the time. £10 million they see as a good deal. And coming in to Celtic, and he's actually coming from Rennes as well, is Jota, a player that they know very, very well. I think we can see pictures of Jota, there he is, being announced as a Celtic player today once again. Again, Celtic say this is good business. They sold him for £25 million 18 months ago to Al Ittihad. Didn't work out. He went to Rennes, got frozen out with the second manager that he played under there. And now Celtic have snapped him up again. It's £8 million and it's a 5.5-year deal.
Right, do you know what? We're going to take a break. I've asked all the questions today, not after the break. Our studio audience have got all their questions lined up. They're here in a moment. See you again. again. Here is the transfer show. As you can see, we're having a really, really good time. We have audience questions. First up, Becky.
My question is, do you think Mikel Arteta's comments that he wants a striker were aimed at the owners?
Shay Given.
Oh, good question. Possibly. I think we're probably all in agreement that I think they're a striker short. Obviously, the injuries recently to Saka and Jesus has really sort of forced his hand. I think if they really want to keep pushing Liverpool all the way, I think that will be the perfect position, in my opinion, to fill in. I think even at the start of the season in the summer, I thought that was a position that he should have filled in. I mean, Henry mentioned before that Havertz is not a natural number 9. He's more a 10 or arriving into the box, which he has done well this season. But I still think, had they a striker possibly, I mean, Ferguson's been linked with every club up there. Has Arsenal been linked with my fellow Irishman? I don't know. But yeah, I do think they could bring a forward player in.
I don't think it's aimed at the owners either, because whenever you hear Mikel Arteta talking, he says, we are working hard. It's all done by committee. They're all in it together, and they're all discussing who they want to bring in. So
Right, I want to get these questions in. Huey, where are you, Huey?
Hi.
Right, away you go.
Given Liverpool's current playing style, if we don't strengthen in this window, do you think we can go one step further and actually achieve and win the quad?
Ooh,
Quadruple.
quadruple.
Liverpool fans gone early already. Quadruple.
I thought Liverpool fans weren't mentioning the quadruple till the end
Huey
of the season.
is.
Huey's gone early with that. Look, they're having a brilliant season. Arne Slot, it seems, can do no wrong. Obviously sitting at the top of the Champions League, sitting at the top of the Premier League, of course still in the League Cup as well, and the FA Cup. It couldn't go any smoother. I mean, the big talk every time you mention Liverpool's the 3 players out of contract, but that doesn't seem to affect them either. I don't think they have to strengthen at all because everything's going so perfect for them. Sometimes a player coming in this time of year can rock the boat, perhaps, maybe, and it's not the right time. I would be quite happy with the squad as long as no one leaves, like a Trent or something in this window. I think it's important that them 3 stay as well.
Ryan.
Hello, my question's for Shay. You've had an amazing career for Ireland and those are Premier League clubs. Who's been your toughest player that you've faced in your career?
Toughest player in my career? Oh, there's been a few of them. Probably Henry gets a mention. Bergkamp, Van Nistelrooy, Rooney. There've been quite a few. Zola, I don't know. I've been lucky enough to play against some great players in the Premier League, so I think to say one would be tough. But played against a few greats, and of course I played with a few as well, likes of Alan Shearer, Carlos Tevez, people like that. So I've been quite lucky.
We've got to whiz through. Trevor, who's next? Trevor.
My question: Nottingham Forest have started off so well. Expectations, could they finish the top 4, or is there more realistic finish the top 7?
Anybody, you guys?
Who wants that?
You carry on, Shay.
I'm on a roll, am I? I mean, the job Nuno's done at Nottingham Forest is phenomenal. It really is. Obviously, had a bad weekend at Bournemouth, losing, of course, but I just think if they finished in any of the European positions, top 6, top 7, I think it would be a brilliant season. I think they will drop out of the top 4, if I'm being brutally honest, but any European places will be a great season.
Right, Teresa, last question.
Right, mine's a bit of a fun question because on the stadiums you've got all the big screens. So I just wondered, when you're on the pitch, do you look at yourself on the screen?
Obviously.
Sometimes I think, sometimes I suppose if you're playing at home, sometimes they show like the goals or they show you making a great save. But if you're away from home, sometimes you make a mistake as well as a goalkeeper, and the last thing you want to do is looking up at the big screen to see it replayed again. So it can have good moments and bad moments.
When did this start? When players were like,
I know.
so they're going to get lip reading?
Especially when you see something like, I don't know, say for example, 2 Portuguese like Bruno Fernandes at Man United talking to his manager in Portuguese. Unless we can all speak Portuguese, I'm sure they're speaking a different language as well. But yeah, there's lip readers out there in all sorts of languages. But no, it wasn't in my time, I don't think. Yeah. Probably can't understand me anyway, Mike, is it?
Listen, we are done. Can I say a huge thank you? Henry Winter, who's over there, Shay Given, Dharmesh Sheth, Kaveh Solokol, and our fabulous studio audience. We are back tomorrow at 5, and we'll do it all again. The Transfer Show. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.